Hello psychologists, and welcome to episode 3 of the social influence section. In this episode we're going to be looking at conformity to social roles, and we're going to be looking at this through Zimbardo's classical study with the Stanford prison experiment. So what I'd like to do before the end of this episode is be able to define key aspects of Zimbardo's classic study. We're going to link this Stanford prison experiment to ideas about conforming to social roles, and we'll find an evaluative research study and try and expand on some evaluations as well.
1, 2, 3.
So the reason for Zimbardo's prison study was he wanted to look and find out the reasons for what he saw was very high levels of aggression in the American prison system. And he wanted to know whether this was due to either the prisoners and guards' personalities or dispositions, or was it something to do with the prison itself that caused these aggressive tendencies. So what he decided to do was he created a fake prison in the basement of Stanford University. He had 21 male students who he rated as physically and mentally stable among 75 applicants who had got back to him based on a newspaper ad. And then from these 21 male students, he randomly selected 10 guards and 10 prisoners. The prisoners were given a realistic arrest by some local police. They were fingerprinted, they were stripped, they were deloused, so they were sprayed with some kind of horrible chemical. And then they were given a prison uniform, which was just a basic smock. And this was an attempt to try and dehumanize and kind of take away their individuality as well. When they were in the prison, they had to follow really strict rules throughout the day, and the guards were given complete control over them and their actions. The guards were given a uniform, clubs, handcuffs, and those kind of mirrored sunglasses, which stops you being able to see somebody's eyes to avoid eye contact. Now what happened was the prisoners and the guards conformed to their social roles quickly. So there is a social role of being a prisoner, there is a social role of being a guard, and very quickly these Stanford University students stopped being Stanford University students and effectively turned into prisoners or turned into guards. Now in 2 days, the prisoners ended up revolting against the really bad treatment that was done to them by the guards. And actually by 6 days, the experiment was completely cancelled because of fears for the prisoners' well-being, in particular their mental health. So what we found is everybody involved in the experiment conformed to their social roles, which shows the situational power of a prison environment to change people's environment. In fact, even Zimbardo himself, when dealing with some of the participants who were acting as prisoners, he couldn't help himself but fall under a kind of a superintendent role and kind of think through that narrative about trying to keep his prison running and not thinking about the students' mental well-being.
Evaluative research.
So one attempt to recreate Zimbardo's prison study was Riker and Halslam, and they tried to make a TV program for the BBC along the same lines. Now, in this simulation, the prisoners became dominant over the guards, and the guards were unable to control the prisoners' behaviour. Now, we could argue that maybe this is a problem for Zimbardo, where they basically found the opposite results, but perhaps that isn't the problem. Perhaps these were ordinary individuals and they wouldn't maybe have been aggressive or disobedient in day-to-day life, but when they became prisoners, maybe their definition of what the social role of a prisoner was to disobey. So some additional evaluations. Now, it could be that it wasn't that the prisoners and guards fell into a social role. It could have been that the students who had taken on the positions of prisoners and guards actually started acting instead of having their behaviour kind of automatically manipulated. And they would have acted according to what they knew about prisoners and what they knew about guards. And all they would have known, because they hadn't have been to prison themselves, was stereotypes they've seen in the media. One film at the time was called Cool Hand Luke, and it showed a particularly controlling and aggressive guards. And one of the guards actually cited Cool Hand Luke to the other guards when talking about what his personality was like in that situation. Now, Zimbardo also used the study to argue that the prison situation itself causes guards and prisoners to become aggressive. But there's a problem with this. Only a third of the participant guards actually became excessively aggressive. Another third were relatively neutral, and another third actually tried to help the participants who were, as the prisoners at times, sometimes relaxing the rules or giving out cigarettes. And we can also judge Zimbardo's study as a failure on his own terms. He did want to reduce the amount of violence in American prisons, but American prisons are, if anything, even more excessively violent than they were in his time, both on the part of prisoners and guards. Okay, hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a like. If you haven't already, click subscribe to be updated with new videos. And also, if you have any questions about the content covered during this video, please drop a comment in the comments below. If you see a question and you think you can answer it, then please give that a go as well. Thank you very much. Until the next episode of PsychBoost.